Well, our guest is ready for us, and he is currently joining us via Zoom, and he's the Secretary General, University of Port Harcourt Alumni Association and River State Chapter President. He's also an economist, talking about Dr. Tamunoemi Ajen-Alamonia. Good morning, Dr. Tamuno. Can you hear us clearly?
Good morning. I can hear you loud and clear. Good morning. Can you
All
hear
right.
me?
Dr. Tamuna, you are
Yes,
well
dear.
aware of the numbers. Nigeria's debt servicing has hit $817 million. All right, what does this signify for our economy, really?
Well, first thing first, one has to point out the realities of what's in place. I'm a managerial scientist. My PhD is in management and human resource. I know during the undergraduate days, for you to become a manager, you must have to be to have crossed your courses like principles of economics. So based on that background, I think looking at what these debits, they how they tend to pay the bills, the debts that are held, it's is a welcome development. And if you look through the central bank database, you'll find out that there are certain figures that are there that are also conflicting with some other figures that some other persons are buttressing. But the key thing here is that when debts are held and then they are reimbursed, it has impact basically on the economy. Impact on the economy. You know, these percentages increases as the time unfolds. If you look at what the 2024, 2023, and 2025 amount paid, you will see that there is a gross increase even with the 2025 as of February. You observe that these are the impacts we're pointing at that affects the average Nigerians. The Nigerian public is not basically interested in the trillions and the billions of dollars that they can find on paper. They want to see the economy reflecting on the individual, the life of Nigerians as citizens. And so I think that's the base that one should look at this point.
All right, Doctor, let us draw a quick comparative, analysis. How has Nigeria's,
Okay.
debt servicing, situation, how can it be comparable to other, African countries? Would you say that we're doing better than other African countries in paying back our debts, or a lot has to go into us improving on our debt, servicing?
Like I said, if you look at what has transpired in previous years, you find out that what is used to service debt is like 50%. You use 50% of the amount generated to service debt. And so it affects negatively on the bearing of Nigerians as it is. If you look at African continent and other African countries, you agree with me that one, there are factors you put into consideration to say an economy is doing well, of which you cannot put aside the population. Now, if you look at the population, you find out that there is no African country that has the number of citizens that Nigeria has. But the economically, when you look at it, it's not just the numbers, but the well-being of those numbers. That's where the focus is. Other African countries, of course, if you're planning an economy, you would not, if, let's give an instance with a family of three, a family of two, you would not compare with a family of 20. And so Nigeria, in this case, you could see as a country of 20. Other African countries are you see them as lesser. And so planning those economy, there, in terms of comparison, there is also when you look at, like you rightly said, in comparison, two entities cannot be the same. They will be what they are, and this other will be what it is. And so that's the basis for the comparison. So with the economy of other African nations, I don't think it is there's nothing they would have done that will make them surpass Nigeria as a country. Now, if, for instance, I want to cite an instance, if somebody has 1 million of maybe 500,000, or let me say 1,000 naira to the minimum, and one other person, and that 1,000 naira is meant for one person or two people, and one other person has that same 1,000 for 20 people, you agree with me that the complaint from that other persons from the 20 will be more. It will be as if they are not having anything. So I think what the government should be doing, in as much as debts are being serviced over the years as placed on record, even at the CBN data, I think that focus should be on improving the standard of living of Nigerians. Because if they continue to hear this number of billions, this number of trillions, it doesn't make sense. Because if you look at between, what would you say, January, as of their servicing for January 2024, it amounted to about 5.4 billion US dollars. And that situation, if an ordinary, or maybe let me say a citizen who is barely struggling to survive, comes to terms with those kind of values, they will be thinking that the government is not functioning. The government is not functioning, because if such is happening, then it should also reflect in the life and the standard of living. Again, if you also observe other African countries, you observe that some of the African countries, they have power supply, regular power supply that comes from even Nigeria as a supply base. But what is the power situation in Nigeria? And if you look at the rate at which, when you look at the birth rate, Nigeria is not reducing in number, it is increasing. I think the government should also look at, because there are factors when you look at the economy that makes an economy functional and better for the people. So I think the government should look at situations where the citizens can gladly say that they are Nigerians. Because most of them, if you look at even other parts of the world where they are trying to repatriate and some other places, I think if the country is doing well, people who are even in diaspora will want to step in. And you cannot undermine population when it has to do with economy. Now, population, if the population is to an extent, like Nigeria is estimated for over 200 million. If you're doing a business with over 200 million people, I know that the productivity will be high. Now, how do you produce in a country where you don't have power supply? How do you expect the youths that are promising? A lot of them have studied all their lives. Some are into various forms they have some skills attached to themselves. If there is power supply, you find out that these persons can also set up industry that will be productive and would also amount to benefiting the country. Because whether you like it or not, the country also receive what you call, I think they normally do that, even when sometimes some persons also argue and say that the country is overtaxing. Because if you work at the end of the month, when they want to pay you, you still find out that they collect taxes. You still go to the shop where you want to buy, even if it's a pen. There's what they call VAT. Value-added tax is also attached. So they keep taxing the people, and the people are not getting much. So if they are servicing debt, which is very good, and one also looks at the point where the country will not always be indebted, but also grow to the point where other countries can also be indebted to them,
Yeah.
where they could also look at, like now, as these debts are being done, the impact is on the naira. Is on the naira. So, and if you look at situations, from the drastic way at which the naira has gone to the point that, in fact, you're dealing with an economy that works with other countries' currency. So I think the government needs to do a lot. The government needs to do a lot. And these figures conflicting, whether in billions of dollars or trillions of naira or whatever it is not making sense to Nigerians.
Yes.
It is not. What makes
No.
sense to Nigerians is how the government is able to create a conducive atmosphere for them to be productive.
All right. So you've spoken a lot about improving the standard of living of Nigerians, regardless of the worrisome debt to revenue ratio, in the country. So my question to you is, do you think at this point in time Nigeria is in a dire need for a debt forgiveness of some sort, debt relief, I meant to say? You think Nigeria is ripe for a debt release, just so the economy can breathe a little to improve the standard of living of the common Nigerian person?
Yeah, that's not far-fetched. I think when the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, was the president of this country then, I think there was also debt forgiveness. So it is not strange, and it is not something that, if it happens now, it is something that it is rocket science or coming from the blues. No, if the government of the day is able to achieve such, it's better. But I think before such things happen, they would have known that you're unable to pay, or you've been able to pay to a certain magnitude. It's like, let's just look at it this way. People indulge themselves in various forms of businesses, and loaning is also a form of business that enhances the economy of nations, families, and business and their lives. Now, if Nigeria as a country is indebted, the money that they are paying to service those debts is not the capital itself. It's not the main debt. You're servicing to reduce the amount. I want to state this. If you use, maybe you loan 10 naira, and then you're asked to pay a charge of 1 naira. When you're paying those one naira, that is a servicing of the debt. If you service the debt, that has not solved the issue that you're a debtor. So the economy should be driven in a manner where individuals should not be at the stage of going to loan. If you're productive, Nigeria could do a lot of things. If you watch this country, most of the things that is done is being imported. They import virtually everything, even to toothpick. But the economy, when you have leadership, you expect that the leadership should put some certain things in place that will boost the economy, and that will be good for export. If it is for export, you find out that the value, if the dollar is 1,700 naira, or maybe 1,600, or whatever it is, you'll find out that at that point, you're making more money for yourself than when you're always importing. So the government of the day, well, if they try to pardon them, it's good. But I think that a man is worthy of his wages. They should work to see that this country works, not just soliciting. If it comes, it's fine. I remember that when Obasanjo was there, they took off the debt. But where are we now? Look at the volume. We're talking about, as of January 2024, and this to this point where debts are being serviced with $547 billion. It doesn't make sense.
All right.
It
Okay,
doesn't.
so let's step away from debt release and talk about the possibility of jumpstarting the Nigerian state to find creative ways to generate, GDP. But before we go into that, I want you to enlighten us on the percentage of Nigerians' revenue that is going directly into debt servicing, and what other creative ways can the Nigerian state jumpstart, the economy to, go ahead to produce more revenue aside oil and, of course, internally generated funds from taxation. So my question actually is two-pronged: a percentage of revenue that is going into debt servicing, and from your perspective as an economist, what creative ways can we jumpstart more revenue creation in Nigeria?
Like I said, I'm a managerial scientist, and economy is part of the system. Now, depending on what, like we said, this loan, like if you go to bank, you want to get a loan, the percentages are there. If you go to these roadside persons, their percentages are also there. So the percentage is not the issue, but if you take these loans, the reason you're taking these loans, there is nothing wrong in taking loans. You can take a loan, set up a business, make profit, pay, and then at the end of the day, make a living out of it. So there is nothing wrong with that. Now, if you also look at the situation where it is the economy, when this loan is being taken, like I must state that most people complain that the problem in Nigeria is corruption. I want to differ to say the problem in corruption with Nigeria is not corruption. It's injection. It's injection because they do all this money. If, for instance, you have ministries and agencies, and they budgeted for each of these agencies or their departments or their lights, someone who is in office, who is expected to, if they have to do roads, they say, okay, they budgeted 10 million for these roads or 200 billion for these roads. The person carries this 200 billion out of the country into a different economy. Remember, Nigeria is also an economy of our own. If you carry this money to any other country, you have imputed into that, is like injecting into that country's economy. That country can utilize that money you brought. Look at what these persons are doing to this country. They just come up with, it's a strategy. They set up policies where you can come up with any amount of money. Once you step into their country, you cannot take it out. And so those agencies or those ministries that this money is being budgeted to suffer from those things. Like we're looking at power now. We're looking at roads. If you try to ask one or two people that are in the labor market, if they tell you how much they spend for diesel, fuel, it's overwhelming. And that's why you see that the bills on Nigerians is endless. The pain is ceaseless. If you now look at the situation and you say, okay, since this situation is biting, you want to do this, you must orientate the people. I think what these people need to be informed about is the orientation. If there are good health facilities here, nobody will be rushing their wards outside the country. So the government of the day should be able to come. There are a lot of policies, there are a lot of laws, but they don't want to come up with policies where it will be difficult for any of these foreign countries. They are like, if before you were colonized, you still live by those traits, you should be able to stand as an independent nation to say, look, these are the things that can better the lots of this country. Look at other countries. They decide to close their border, trade within themselves, and when they came up with opening their borders, the world marveled with the kind of things that they've been able to come up with. With this country now, I think one way they said they want to diversify. You hear even the present government talking about diversification. If you want to go to agriculture, they say it is tax-free. And as of today, as we speak, we still have manual farming. So how do you then feed these over 200 million people? They should indulge themselves into mechanic. I don't know. You should change the narrative of those manual ways and then go mechanical. I don't understand why the government deals with experts, professionals. So to me, they don't have any reason to fail. The reason is that if they are failing is because they are injecting what is meant for the economy. If you go and borrow, you borrow to pay, you borrow to squander, then you die in abject poverty. And that's what Nigerians are facing, and that's the.
All right, doctor, you will do me a favor. You sit directly in front of your camera so we can get your full view, because as it stands, we're only seeing your side view. Thank you. All right.
Okay, I don't know if you're getting me clearly now.
Okay. Now, in the course of this discussion, rather, you did mention that the burden of the debts of Nigeria's debt falls directly on the naira. Do you mind explaining further what you mean by that, so that someone who is not an economist can have a grasp of what you mean?
Okay, like I said, I'm a managerial scientist, and principles of economics is one of my courses that I've gone through. But what one is saying is that, to put it in a perspective where everyone could understand, if you take a loan, to buy a car or maybe build a house, which is something that is not generating income, you find out that because you have collected, mortgaged, you have also mortgaged or if you're a family person, if you're married, you have children, if you've taken a loan and you bought a car, you built a house, the children are in the house. If tomorrow the car is bad and they want to recover their debt, what would they do? They will come for the house and will keep your home, your family members homeless. So that is, in a nutshell, trying to point out the impact. Because if you look at the value of the naira, initially in this country, we have a situation where the naira was slightly above the dollar, got to the stage of the dollar, and now the dollar is far above the naira. Now, the dollar is not the most valued currency. There are currencies that are also more valuable than the dollar. These economies were able to put things in place that sustained it. Now, if you look at this country, the major source of income in this country is the oil and gas. They trade with it. But how do you trade with it? You carry your product and you're going to sell it at the value of another person's currency. So invariably, you're losing, they are getting those products as virtually free. As virtually free. So they need to think outside the box, come up with situations where they'll be trading their products with their economy, with their currency, and not their product with other countries' currency. When you want to export, you can now look at whichever country's currency you want to deal with. That should be the situation. But when you want to trade, you should trade to the point where it will be beneficial to you and also your world. Right. So it's just I don't know, the little way I could use to make everyone understand that when you're indebted, you're enslaved. If you, in a bid to service the debt, it's like freeing yourself from slavery. But one good thing is that look at this country. What are the investments this country has? What are the investments? I'll give a case study. If you look at some states, even in Nigeria, there was a time where some states where they have investments, good investments, and those states they depend solely on the economy. So whether the federal government brings allocation or not, they are up and running. I think the federal government should also live like that, and other states alike should also act likewise. I think in that manner, even if you're taking a loan, it will not just be to one person who is in office who just inject it out, and everybody will be suffering for it. I think they should come up with something where they will invest it and they should be held responsible for their actions.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tamunoemi, for your insights in the subject matter. You've been very helpful. Thank you for your time.
No problems. Do have a great day, work.
Thank you.
And to Nigerians, keep faith alive.
Absolutely.
Better days ahead.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for still staying with us. New Day continues right after this time out. Stay with us.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.